What's up, guys? It's Josh Lau here with my good friend Nathan Crawford. Uh, it is February 6th, 2023. We just got back from the calling in Indianapolis. Uh, Before we start the video, we just want to shout out fabtcg. Thanks for sending us to Indy. Thanks for sponsoring the Card Guys, and thank you for everything that you've done. Indianapolis was, an 8-hour drive for us. Pretty uneventful drive up there. And, just going into the event, Nathan, I felt like we both had some ideas of what the meta would be, but I think we were both fairly caught off guard. Is that safe to say?
I mean, we both expect a lot of Briar, and it was the most played deck, so I think we were spot on about that. I think where we went wrong was how good we thought it would do. We thought it would overperform, hence why everybody was playing it, and that just simply was not the case.
Yep. Going into Indianapolis, I think we both expected Briar and Dash to perform pretty well. We also thought decks like Dorinthia and Bravo were, staple choices. But this is something that we're going to go into in a little bit, looking at, conversion rates, metagame share, and all that. I think this event really painted a pretty clear picture of the effects of the BNR that were, about a week ago. But I guess let's just first start off, like, what did we bring to the calling and why did we bring it? We'll let you go first.
Sure. So, everybody that watched the footage already knows I brought Briar. Nothing particularly like spicy, not the Goliath Gauntlet deck. I left that Dagon White. He actually ran it. Hats off to him. Did pretty good too. So shout out for him. But I just brought Channel Heroic Briar with a couple, unconventional things, the rights, the yellow rabbles, things like that. I just bought it, or I brought it because it was my kind of just my comfort pick. I've been playing the deck for about a year now, and we had it in our head that it was the best deck, so there's no reason why you would not bring that deck to that tournament. That was at least my thought process, and I had solidified a lot of matchups. I'd used Crown of Seeds for Lexi, and there was. I thought it was in a good spot, and it performed well. It did. There was a couple spots where it was unfortunate, but that's part of playing Runeblade.
Yep. So overall, you finished 8-4, I believe. You made day
X4.
2 and went X4. Okay. Yep. As for me, I actually took card for card my exact PQ3 list, mainly because I was not really sure how to. Like, one of the issues with Dorinthia is that you got to understand what you're going to be sideboarding against, and there wasn't really a clear picture for that. So I just my PQ3 deck was designed to be able to handle a variety of situations. And something we're going to talk about later is that answering every question that every hero poses is maybe not the best approach for the game. Asking questions generally will get you further than answering questions. Anyways, so I brought my PQ3 deck, Dorinthia, and I went 4-3. Didn't make day 2. I sideboarded incorrectly against a Bravo and a Lexi. One of the issues is that when your opponent presents a deck, you're not sure if they're playing aggro Bravo. Are they playing control Bravo? Are they playing something kind of in between? You don't really know, right? And if you guess incorrectly, you can get mega punished for that. Reason being, if your opponent is playing there's many situations where you can get punished, right? But I'm going to give you a very, very specific example here, right? So if you're playing Dorinthia against aggro Bravo and you sideboard for control Bravo, this means you have things like Energy Potion, Iron Song Pride. You have a thicker deck, right? So you're probably running closer to 70 cards. You have Remembrance in your deck. you're designed to take the game very slowly, and that gets run over by aggro Bravo because you have no blocks in your hand, and your deck is thicker, so the consistency of your shunts being there is lower, right? So you can get punished that way, right? But let's say you're playing against Control Bravo, and you sideboard as it's aggro Bravo. So to sideboard against aggro Bravo, you would bring closer to 60. You would still bring your shunts in, but you would not bring in your setup cards like Epot, Remembrance, and less powerful cards in a quick matchup like Ironsong Pride, right? Ironsong Pride is good, but not really great in the first cycle, right? So if you sideboard like that, and they play defensively, block well, hammer, you're going to get to a major life deficit, and then they'll pivot, and then you'll probably die, right? So that's an issue. I ran into 2 Bravos in that tournament. I sideboarded the same way, and I got rewarded once and punished once. And that's kind of how it is, right? There's no information. When they flip over their hero, you have no idea, right? And that's why answering questions is maybe not the best solution, right? I had another loss against a Dromai. This is probably something I'll talk about in Fab 201 later. But you got to be aware of your win conditions, right? And I was very fixated on my opponent's win condition at the very end of the game, and I didn't even realize that there was a win condition for me that would supersede my opponent's win condition, right? And then my loss against Lexi, I was just in a kind of... Because I started with 2 losses, and then I won 4 games in a row, right? I was not in a very good mood. And then round 7, I played against Lexi, and I'm like, I'm supposed to fatigue Lexi. I wrote in my sideboard guide that I'm supposed to fatigue Lexi. But I was like, no, I'm angry. Not angry. I wanted to
let a little steam off. Yeah.
Beat this Lexi up, basically.
Right.
And the Lexi was so disruptive that I never really got a 5-card hand to push damage, right? And, barely lost that one. By 1 life, actually. But is what it is, right? So, why did I bring Dorinthia? In retrospect, I think that was actually an incorrect choice. Nathan, I think your decision was what type of Briar you would bring, right? But
That's
my
exactly
decision,
right. Yep.
my decision was which hero do I bring, right? And I only play one predominant style for each hero, right? So it's basically do I bring combo Bolton, or do I bring Dawnblade mid-range Dory, right? And in retrospect, I think Bolton would have been much better. Not that not that playing against Ice Heroes is the greatest thing in the world, but Bolton does have the ability to high roll people, and Bolton asks questions. Bolton basically says, "I'm gonna do something ridiculous in 4 to 5 turns. You better stop me, or you better either kill me or set up a situation where you can win post combo. And if you can't do that, well, I'm gonna win, right?" And that's a clear example of asking a question. Another clear example of asking a question is with Icelander. Icelander basically says, "Hi, I'm Icelander. I am extremely, extremely efficient with my cards. And if you drag the game out too long, I kill you with a combo. What are you going to do about it?" Right? Same way that decks like Briar also ask a question. They say, "Hi, I'm Briar. I could play with 1 card very well, and I could play with 5 cards really well, and I could play well with 3 cards. And eventually I'm going to find a card that is so powerful that you're probably going to fall behind and be on the back foot for the whole game," right? These are all examples of decks that ask questions, right? Decks that do not ask questions are decks like more controlling Bravo, more adaptive Dorinthia. And as we can see we're going to talk about this later, the conversion rates for those decks is not very good. They're just not consistent, and they don't ask questions, right? Let's stop saying we're going to talk about things later. Let's just talk about it now, okay?
Let's
So
do it now.
in
There you
post
go.
in post edit, I will bring this up for you guys. All right, so as you guys can see, we have the data here. This was on Twitter, and there was a little bit of the data was incorrect, but this should be the most updated, most precise, and correct data. As you can see, there were 481 players in the calling. 105 of which made day 2. So making day 2 basically was 5-2 or better. Top 32 is obviously 32 players. Top 8 is obviously 8 players. Of note, we'll talk about the conversion rates later, but let's just talk about the general metagame share. I think we both expected Briar to be the most prevalent deck, but I was a little surprised that there was this much Dromai.
The Dromai and Briar matchup isn't that bad, so I mean, I don't think there was a reason for Dromais to be scared off the deck, especially with Phi theoretically taking a down tick. So I think it actually makes sense that a lot of Dromai show up, because the Briar matchup is, depending on how the Briar deck is built, if you run a lot more or like non-go again cards like Coke, stuff like that, it can get a little hairy sometimes if you have an off turn. But if you build your deck in a more consistent way, I would say it's still Briar favored, but definitely not by a lot. So I just don't think the Dromais had a reason to be scared off the deck, basically.
I see. Okay. All right. Then we have, Phi Dash. No surprise there. I think they're solid decks that a lot of people enjoy. And then we have 2 heroes that I think, or the next 4 heroes here, Bravo, Dory, Lexi, Reinhardt, all a little bit higher than I would have expected. I guess the narrative was that Bravo is just a solid hero, and Dorinthia has finally got a few good cards in the last set, and performed pretty well in PQ3 season. So this is the time for Dory to go to a bigger tournament and see if she could take some people down. Thoughts on those 2 heroes?
Yeah, I think the Bravo number could be out of frustration. I could see a situation where a lot of Oldham players lost the well, and were like, well, maybe they never tested Oldham, or they just did it a little bit and just it wasn't clicking for them, and maybe they just said, okay, I'll just do Bravo, because most Guardian players prefer to stay within that archetype, because it's a very specific playstyle that really Guardian doesn't, the playstyle and the skills that you learn playing that deck do not really translate to a whole lot of other decks. Because it's very involved with pitch stacking. It's very involved with resource management, things like that. Other decks do use that. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that Guardian leans on the pitch stacking way more than most decks do.
Lexi and Reinhardt, both pretty popular.
Reinhardt doesn't make sense, but I mean Lexi makes sense.
Yeah, I believe Lexi was maybe the dark horse pick of the tournament, I guess you could say.
Sure.
Okay, and in the middle here, kind of before it drops off a cliff, we have Oldham and Icelander, with 30 and 26 players respectively. Still a decent chunk of the meta, but the main thing is that they had ridiculous day 2 and top 32 conversions. The main reason I want to talk about the top 32 conversion rate is because, well, first of all, I haven't really seen other people talk about the top 32 conversion rate. They mostly just talk about day 2 and top 8 conversion rate, and I don't think those are really 2 good metrics, because day 2 conversion rate is, you only played 7 rounds. That's not enough, in my opinion. And top 8 conversion rate, well, there's only 8 slots, right? So one, right, the difference between 0, 1, and 2 is massive, right? So Top
Absolutely.
32 conversion rate is actually probably the best indicator for the state and health of the high level metagame. And as so let me just like kind of break down this chart here, right? So uh day 2 conversion rate, the expected conversion rate is 21.8%. So 21.8% of the field of 481 players made day 2. In other words, 105 players, right? So if you got to day 2, congratulations, you are part of the top 22% of players. And top 32 is roughly 7%. So if you got top 32 at Indianapolis, congratulations, you got 93rd percentile, basically, right? Highlighted in green, these are decks that performed better than the conversion rate, right? So for day 2, the conversion rate was 21.8. So if you did better than 21.8, you're in green. If you did worse, you're in red. Top 32 conversion rate, 6.7%. If it's green, you did better than 6.7%. If it's less than 6.7, it is red, right? Of note, obviously, Azalea is such a small sample size. Still green, but take it for what you will, right? But I think the main thing is that at the very, very highest level, it is very, very, very crystal clear here that ice decks are good. In particular, Ultimate Icelander are extremely good, with a mind-boggling, like, what is this? 3 to 4 times the conversion rate, right? So, and that is, you know, statistically significant as well, right? So,
Right.
yeah. So let's just kind of look at our top 32 breakdown here. So, Briar did pretty well, 10.1%. I think that's just an indicator that, you know, a lot of players thought Briar was strong, and a good portion of top level players also thought Briar was strong, and Briar has been strong for a very long time. So people with reps on the deck like Nathan are going to be like, all right, we're going to take Briar. So
All right.
no surprise there. Of
I think
note,
that I think the percentage on Briar, I think it has a lot to do with it's a deck that's very hard to like hard counter.
yes.
Like you can't just Phi, you throw a CNC in and they have a stroke, right? Because they run Mask of Momentum or Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, right? Like it's not a hard counter, but like I mean, there's singular cards that you can add. We don't really care about Erase Face. You stop our Bramble Fuse in our channel if you play it at the right time. But I mean, there's no cards out there other than like specific heroes like Icelander and Lexi. That matchup we definitely do not like. But as far as throwing in a couple cards, there really isn't any.
Yep. And being kind of untargetable by sideboard slots makes you very good into the general field.
Right.
Obviously, like you said, you do have some weaker matchups, but you know, with having such a high representation rate, some of the Briars are just going to dodge those, and you know
Right.
that's why there's a pretty decent conversion rate. I think Dromai Phi and Dash is kind of telling a story here. You know, we see that they're all in red there, indicating that they converted less than expected. And I think they're kind of like Dromai Phi and Dash. I guess they're kind of clearly the tier 1.5s here. They're good. They can get you far, but they may not give you the best shot to get. Because think about what top 32 means. Top 32 means you were 1 or maybe 2 wins away from top 8, right? And so Dromai Phi Dash can all give you that shot, but they can't maybe put you in the best shot for top 8, right? Yeah. So, you know, is there kind of a reason we think that Dromai Phi Dash did well but couldn't quite close with the high placing finishes?
Dromai, I think that it's a great it's a list that's very easy to make day 2 with. The thought process there is your opponent, it requires a lot from your opponent to manage what the board state is and when to pivot off of managing the board state to pressuring life totals. It's the classic play into illusionist, and it's not a skill that you can do by playing that matchup 10, 15 times. It takes 100 times.
Yep.
Thankfully, I played a lot when Prism was big, so that's kind of where I learned it. But that's a very specific skill that a top level player has to learn to outperform that deck. And I think the numbers kind of show 16% almost into day 2, and then a significant drop off when you get into the players that actually know what's happening and how to manage those states. As far as Fi, same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, some of those were Kadachi Fis probably, but whatever, you run into the people that realize, okay, they don't have belittle, so they're not as consistent. So let me actually go against conventional wisdom and extend the game by blocking more, so that way they draw that all red hand and then end up pitching a red for a soaring strike.
Yep.
And have a super inefficient turn, and then you gain tempo just by them falling down, basically. So it's just recognizing those tendencies. And then dash, there's just two, like what I said for Briar, that there is no card that targets Briar. It's the exact opposite for dash.
Yeah,
there are several cards that target dash.
Dash and Briar are both very powerful, but one has
right
a weakness, an Achilles heel, you could say.
You have Smashing Good Time, you have Warhorn, you have Erase Face, you have just any like board state deck period is not very conducive. So
like
yeah,
Kyloria can take your items. Like it's not
right.
fun.
Well, you can only pistol Ashwings for so long before they start just outpacing you. So that matchup isn't good. But yeah, and then Dorinthia, once again, decent conversion into day 2. But then when you run into people that know how to block, and you also, like you said, it all the chips. It's the same thing for back when we ran Chain in Pro Tour 1, where it was, I have to guess whether you're going to fatigue me or not, and every card that I go in the opposite direction hurts the plan if my hedge is wrong. And it all comes down to basically opportunity cost within certain cards.
I talked with several Dorinthia players there, and the ones that made day 2, I talked to like 3 of them. They all seem to be on a much more streamlined, aggressive version of Dorinthia. Not my style of Dorinthia, which is very, very reactive. My teammates and other people have also commented that I'm one of the more patient Dorinthia players. I've played the mirror enough to know that that's probably true. That a lot of Dorinthia players are very, very ham. And, that will work if your deck is very streamlined for that, right? But you do have to dodge a few bad matchups, in particular, like very defensive Oldhim or Dromai is also pretty bad, because you can't just blindly go Unga Bunga Dory into those decks, right? So yeah, I think that's kind of how it is with Dory. Yeah, so I guess the main thing that we kind of need to talk about is like how I talked about earlier, like decks should ask questions, right? And the question that fatigue decks ask is, hi, I'm Oldhim. I'm a fatigue life gain Oldhim. Does your deck have the capability to deal burst damage or set up a ridiculous combo or have some late game, end game board state or loop that can deal enough damage to kill me within 55 minutes?
Right.
And that question is a question that LSS is going to have to think very carefully about whether or not they want that to be a question that players can even ask of other players, right?
Right.
That
I think there.
yeah.
I think there's a lot of players. I don't want this to come off the wrong way when I say that, I can't ever blame a player for playing a life game fatigue deck, right? Like, I played against Pat, played against Hike, great guys, super nice, all the best to them, right? And they're just trying to play a strategy to have the best chance of winning. And like, hats off to them. That's what everybody should be doing. You can't blame like the player for playing a certain style deck, right? But ultimately, what I'm worried about is I think there's a decent number of players that might not play the game if that's 15% of the field or 20% of the field. And I think whether it be in a BNR announcement or whatever, I think LSS just needs to kind of state whether that's a valid strategy or not.
The current status actually kind of reminds me a little bit about the Awakening ban. I don't know if you remember this, right? So back then, we had Starvo, Prism, and Viscerai. This Awakening was banned, I think, either the same time or around the same time as Scalata, right? But before Awakening and Scalata were banned, there were 3 of them, right? And the reason why those 3 were basically the only decks that could be played was because Prism could beat Starvo and Viscerai could OTK Starvo, right?
Right.
And why did Starvo literally eliminate 13 other heroes? Because of Awakening. And that wasn't even played in every deck. But just the fact that Awakening existed was enough to push every other deck out of the format, especially the aggro decks, because Awakening basically said, great, throw your damage at me. I'm going to get a Pulverize for free. I'm going to get a Crippling Crush for free. Right?
Right.
And
if you ever fall behind, it's just a free catch-up mechanic. Basically.
Exactly. And they had 3 of those. So,
right.
I mean, the current state kind of reminds me of that, where it's like Prism had the auras to beat Starvo, Viscerai had the OTK to beat Starvo. The other heroes literally did not have a chance in hell, right?
Right.
I mean, I did combo 10 of them at PT1 with Bolton, but that's, I combo Akano and Bolton actually were good against Starvo as well, right? So that there actually were 4 counters to Starvo, right? But if we look at Oldhim, Control Oldhim, how many counters does Control Oldhim have? This is something that we were talking about before. Why don't you kind of break down what you see as like the heroes that have the agency to deal with this and the heroes that don't?
So I wouldn't even use the word counter, right? I would just say that there's only 5 heroes out of the 16 that have the toolkit or the cards, right? Because let's say Viscerai is an example. You could be the best player in the world. You could go through your first cycle and pitch non-attack, attack, non-attack, attack, non-attack, attack, and then pitch your Tome of the Arknights within that pitch stack and get to a point to where you can Mordred and, triple tome and guarantee that you hit on every one of them. And it doesn't matter because when you set that up, he's going to be at 80 life. Right? And you're just not going to be able to, you don't have the tool kit to win that game with Viscerai. And there's only 5 heroes that I can think of.
Sure.
Briar.
Let's run through them.
Yep. So Briar, because she has access to Rites of Replenishment and Evergreen. And then you have Dromai due to board state, obviously. You have Phi, which is kind of iffy. You have the Graveyard Recursion with the Phoenix Flame. And then you also have Art of Wars and Spreading Flames. It is unlike Channel Mount Heroic, it doesn't require a lot of pieces. It's just like, oh, this is a good hand and it's an arsenal. Let's go, right? It's not reliant on you. Like, it is reliant on drawing, but like a lot less so because half of your deck isn't like non-attacks kind of thing. So and then Dash board state as well, right?
Yep.
So Bravo, you could say, okay, well, Bravo counters it, right? False, because if you dominate an attack for 10 and they crown, rampart, block with a card, you deal
block
5, and then and then they healing bomb on their turn. So the dominate didn't mean anything because the active life gain just transfers that dominate damage. You're basically blocking on your turn instead of your opponent's turn is all you're doing with the life gain. What about Rhinar, where the whole mechanic is designed around defeating what should be that strategy? Well, it turns out that when you have to discard half your deck every time you attack,
you get fatigued pretty quickly.
Yeah. Even if you intimidate, the life gain is enough to outlast that. So literally, the 5 heroes are Briar, Dromai, Fi, Dash, and then Icelander, and then obviously the mirror match. Which mazel tov to whoever wants to play that. I'll
throw in a little story here about, because we were before we recorded this, I told Nathan about Bolton, and I have played combo Bolton against Life Gain Oldhim, and you could almost get there. If you put Spirit of Arena in play, you put your E-Pots in play, you go with your triple Lumina, you could almost get there, but you give them it gives them a little bit too much time. They literally get to play every life gain thing in their deck, and you're probably missing about 8
damage isn't even enough.
That whole combo can deal about 70, right? Which is as good as it gets, right? But can't quite get there. So Kano, possibly, but I think they were gonna run Oasis and Steadfast, and like the Kano that would a Kano would literally have to set up like Imperial Edict and like declare no Oasis this turn or something like that to even have a chance. In addition to like a perfectly pitched deck, like that's asking a lot, right? But possible, right? Because Blazing Aether scales exponentially, right? Whereas Lumina Go Boomina does not scale as hard, right? So you know how, like I said, like in PT1, the combo decks were kind of like a counter to Starvo. The combo decks are not that great of a counter to the Oldhim at the moment. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about Oldhim, but ultimately Icelander won the tournament. So let's dive into that a little bit. Let's talk about what questions she's asking and whether that question is healthy, right? So as I talked about at the very beginning, Icelander says, "Hi, I'm Icelander. My deck is ultra efficient. I play on both your turn and my turn, and I can disrupt you if you're being too aggressive, and if you're too slow, I can combo you with Frost Hex." From a game design standpoint, she sounds pretty good on paper. Seems fairly interactive, right? Especially with Hypo being gone. There's some counterplay now. But the question is that the Frostbite mechanic is really, really powerful in really, really strong players' hands. The easiest way to explain this is that if you watch a game and you just look at 2 moments in an Oldhim with Stalagmites game, you show me the first instance where they blocked with their Stalagmite and the second instance where they blocked their Stalagmite, I can already tell you how good that Oldhim is out of 10. Right? And not even mentioning like how they use Ice React, which is a whole other thing, right? So Icelander giving Frostbites at the correct time. Like we talk a lot about giving agency to players, like is having these Frostbite mechanics maybe too much agency, too much control over the game.
I think what I contribute to Icelander's strength the most is the lack of opportunity cost in combating multiple. So, like taking Josh's example, right? If he's playing Dory into a Bravo and it's aggro Bravo, he needs the shunts to leverage an opportunity to fight back and gain some tempo. But if he's wrong and he runs into control Bravo and has a bunch of shunts in his deck, they're just dead cards that are actually going to hurt him because he's going to draw it while he has full tempo and not produce any more damage.
And I also don't have the tools like Epot and Remembrance.
Right. Exactly. And so, whereas Icelander says, okay,
You're Bravo.
my counter is a blue block 3 that is ice that fuses everything in my deck. It pitches for everything in my deck. It blocks very well. Like, there's no if the Icelander is wrong, there is no opportunity cost paid. There just isn't.
You know, that point is so interesting. Now that I think about it a little bit more, are good quality blue cards at majestic rarity just problematic?
Unless they're in my Goliath Gauntlet Briar deck, yes.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Like you think about heroes like Reinhardt. Do they have a god tier blue card? No. Ketsu, does he have a god tier blue card? Lord of Wind. That's it. Dorinthia literally only has Glint. Bravo has a ton, but Bravo has other issues, right? Oldhim has a ton of great blues. Icelander has a ton of great blues. So
it might not
a
even,
hero
it might
that's
not
like
even
designed around the blue mechanic or 3-pitch mechanic, like
it might not even be necessarily the blue. I think it just revolves around the opportunity cost associated with being wrong. So now we can take it Oldhim, for example, right? Oldhim did very well. Well, let's say Oldhim runs into a match and has to run Remembrance, whatever. I don't know. Maybe they saw like Pat. I don't know. So like they run into a match where they need to add Remembrance, right? And maybe that's not part of the win con. The reason that there's no opportunity cost necessarily for Oldhim, because he can just arsenal it
and then
crown it
ship
away.
it away.
And it blocked away. It did its job.
Yeah.
And then Oldhim has no way to shuffle. So in that scenario, if you don't need Remembrance, it's obviously not going to be the longest game, right? So he's never going to see that card again. And it did not cost him. It went along with the game plan, business as usual.
Yep.
So I think the best decks have agency, are consistent, and have very low opportunity cost on going with strategies against different decks. You can look at the opposite side, Lexi, right? If Lexi runs into a Dorinthia and sides in last ditch efforts and a whole bunch of other stuff because they're trying to beat the fatigue, but then they flip over Royal Dorinthia and start playing cash-ins and like go in face, and you're running a 70 card deck, and now you don't see your 3 of a kinds. That's what makes you lose those games, because you don't know that information. And heroes like Oldhim and Icelander just don't have to pay that cost because they just don't care.
If a deck can run exactly 60 cards into every matchup, that's really, really strong, right?
Right.
That just means that you've allocated your sideboard slots so perfectly, and your deck can hedge against different things, or doesn't care about hedging. Like Bolton does not give a crap about what flavor of dash you're bringing. You could be Mecha Dash, you could be Hanabi Blaster Dash, you could be Talishar Dash, you could be Pistol Dash. I don't care, right?
Yep.
Well,
my favorite things about Briar as well. Like if you're going against fatigue, I take out 2 CNCs, put in 2 rights. There's no opportunity cost. Both are 2 for 6s that block 3. And if I'm wrong, cool. I'll block with it, go on about my day. But if I'm right, I'm there and we're in it.
That's something I noticed while I was putting together your sideboard guide. It's like you're running 60 in every single matchup because the core of the deck is strong and doesn't need to deviate much to have a plan. So I guess that means LSS just needs to print more cards like this. One of the issues with being a physical trading card game is that you cannot buff things that easily.
Right.
The only way to buff things is
print new cards.
or is for a hero to LL.
Mhm.
Like Prism leaving obviously made certain heroes better, right? Like Bravo and Dory. Or literally printing cards, right?
Right.
LSS can nerf cards. 98% of the time they have chosen to ban or suspend a card, but they did errata Briar.
Right.
So that is an option. The speed at which we see LSS kind of take action, if they
Mhm.
are going to take action, is going to be interesting. Do we think that LSS is going to kind of wait for the Italian battle hardened before they do anything,
Um,
or after maybe the Auckland calling?
just to get the record straight, we are in no way calling for any bans. All we are saying is that there is very clear for this tournament of a decent size. Although this is, I will caveat with, this is the first major tournament in a meta,
Mm-hmm.
so that could just be a symptom of it.
Mm-hmm.
But these numbers statistically are very high. For conversions in the top 32 and top 8.
And they just got nerfed. So
and they
yeah.
just got nerfed, right?
Yeah.
So we're not calling for bans. All we're saying is they do need to answer the question of the life gain Oldham. Either leave it alone, let it be a strategy, but just let the players know that as an entity they do approve of that strategy, so that way people that really don't like it can
There's another thing that I kind of realized
not
is that
engage with it.
they can't even print things or unban Drone of Brutality, because if it's a generic card, it's just going to be used in
Same thing. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so things like Rites of Replenishment works because Oldham cannot run Rites of Replenishment. If Oldham could run Rites of Replenishment, oh my goodness.
Well, rights isn't the problem. It's the deck that you have to run rights to beat. To even have, like, if you don't have rights or evergreen in your Briar deck, your
can't
win
win.
percentage into life gain Oldham is 0.
Yes.
Unless you get
You're the luckiest duck ever
right
in the whole
if he's
flock.
if he rips up Warhorn and sigil on your Force of Nature channel Mount Heroic turn, you might win that one. But
Yep.
that's it.
Yep.
There's just no way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the statistics are good. We can keep going down. Viscera once again, it was decent into day 2. Nothing crazy. It was below rate a little bit. That could be people's willingness to block mob triggers. It's entirely possible. Katsu is a great example, right? It is above rate going to day 2, but then fell off in top 32 due to people knowing what cards to block, when to block, how to block.
That is only 9 though, so if there were literally 8 of them that converted, that would have been red. But sure,
right.
Katsu was about average converting into day 2, but obviously could not convert anybody into top 32, which basically means he probably ran into some bad matchups somewhere and got high rolled once.
Yep. And Azalea was just Levi, and Levi is the Azalea player. He's gonna do well. Simple as that. Is what it is.
So yeah, I think we've had a pretty good discussion here. I guess let's kind of wrap this up. And so going forward, how do we think the metagame will evolve, and do we think LSS will take action, if any? Like, if let's do the classic. We're not really a podcast. We only make videos when there's something relevant. But let's do the classic podcast thing of, like, if you were the developer at LSS, what would you do? Would you wait and see? Would you put some cards on a short list?
It's actually a very hard question. I think you look at the players that are playing the ice decks, they're not like nobodies, right? There's not all the top eights at Indy. Lucas, you know, Charles Dunn, all those guys, you know, Hamilton, obviously, like a majority of those guys are like good players. It's not, they didn't just pick up an overpowered deck and do well with it. It is great players playing great decks. And it goes to show that the amount of variance in Flesh and Blood is very low, and that's a great thing. And that's why I'm not for hitting ice necessarily. Life game fatigue Oldham's got to go. I don't care how. But it's I had the best time just winning mine on camera in the fifth round at Indy.
Yep.
It was a great time. The conversations after, we were cracking up. I mean, coming from somebody that had a strategy to beat it, executed it, and did it well, it's still got to go. Like, I can beat it.
But not everybody can. And that is an issue.
I'm gonna be straight up with everybody. I don't want to beat it. That's the problem. Is I don't want to be put in a situation where I got to play for literally 55 minutes and play at a speed where if I make one little slip up in my pitch stack, I've lost the game because I have to play at such a speed because they're matching numbers on blocks, right? And that's one of the very few decision points in that match, right? What to block and how. Not saying there is skill behind it. I'm not downplaying it that much. But I worry that deck will have negative impacts on the game as far as people having fun, people enjoying it, things like that. Same reason why didn't they make a ban just to make the armories more enjoyable? Was it Stubby Hammers? Wasn't that the there was a card. I don't remember what card it was, but they banned a card and they literally said it because it was a problem at the armory level. And I think Life Game Oldham is not just at the armory level, it's at every level. So whether it's Remembrance, Crown of Seeds, I don't care. The testing team, the devs can get together, find a card or a couple cards and say, okay, if we take this out, it's not a valid strategy. And I fully trust them in their ability to do that.
So something I kind of want to talk about is, if you look at each of the base 8 heroes, they all have a tutor, right? We have Sand Sketch Plan, Showtime, Singing Steel Blade, Ketsu's hero ability, Spark of Genius, Knock the Death Whistle, Lessons in Lava, and Become the Arc Knight, right? So these are all, tutoring is a super powerful mechanic, and they're all class cards. Generics do not tutor in general, right?
Right.
So what I'm trying to, my point here is that Remembrance should be class specific. It should not be a generic. That probably would help to some degree. Like that they'd have to be very careful with that because if there's Remembrance and a class version of Remembrance, that could lead to some shenanigans. But if they're going to ban Remembrance, one way they could go about it is, eventually, if they ban Remembrance soon, and then they give the heroes in the next year or two some version of a class-specific version of that would be good.
And just for the record, on the TheCardGuyz channel, if you go to our Dynasty video when we go over our favorite cards, there was a very smart, brilliant man in that video that said the most impactful Guardian card would be Blessing of Patience. And in that video, in that video, I said that eventually, it may not be now, it may not be tomorrow, but I said eventually life gain would be a problem in this game. And it's here already. Yeah. So just want to put it out there that I called it.
You did. You're the forecaster here. Okay, so yeah, I think we roughly agree on the fact that life gain probably should not be in the game at the moment.
Well, I mean, some is okay, but the whole
sorry,
fatigue life gain.
Yeah, let's be
Just
very, very clear here. Like,
yeah, life
life
gain
gain
Oldham
fatigue
should not be a deck.
Should not be a deck.
Right.
Sigil of Solace, fine.
Yeah,
Heart of
you're
Fendel,
good.
fine. You can stick it.
Right.
Heart of Fendel, actually. All right, you can stay for now because you're shiny and expensive and all that.
Right.
So the other question that they need to ask is whether the ice mechanic is too strong in strong players' hands. Arguably, yes, but that should, in theory, get easier over time.
I'm gonna be honest.
The card pool will become deeper.
I'm gonna be honest. As far as the ice goes, I'm usually not the one to say it, but I'm kind of on the train of get good. I think that they've banned enough. Yeah, to some degree,
to
right?
some degree,
for certain heroes, it's very difficult.
One of the issues is that if you've ever played aggro into a Oldhim that knows how to use Ice React and has Stalagmite, the amount of hoops you have to jump through makes your deck so inefficient that the Oldhim player has to mess up for you to have a good turn.
Right.
And counterplay would be nice. Because if it basically it says at a certain point the Oldhims get too good, you can't beat them. Sorry. That's just how it is.
So are you talking about like a generic thaw kind of mechanic? Maybe a generic piece of equipment, some oven mitts. I don't know.
I mean, I've always felt like the combination of Oldhim's hero ability plus Stalagmite was a little too strong. I don't know how. Like, maybe Stalagmite should have only been able to block once. I don't know, or I don't even know how to really fix it. But that combination makes it very tough for certain decks to attack them. And I mean, that's just how the hero is, right? But that does that does have the effect, kind of like Awakening did with Starvo. Like, certain decks just cannot deal with that once they come up against an opponent of a sufficient level. And no amount of getting good is gonna make it possible to beat them.
Yeah,
so,
I will admit, I played on my time at Indy. I played 7 ice heroes out of my 12 games, so over half were ice, which against Briar's, most people would say that's a bad matchup. And every single one that I lost 2 and won 5, and I had to work for every one of them. One of them you saw on camera. Had to really work for that one.
Yep. Sure.
So
yeah, I do agree that people do need to get better, but there needs to be some counterplay and agency against very, very strong players.
I agree.
And that
if they hit ice only a little bit, not like a don't take out Chandler Fridge. That might be a little too much.
The easiest way is they could probably just leave it, and just eventually the card pool will get deep enough that you know, it should, in theory, help, right?
Right.
All right. Okay, we've been going for a while. I think we're gonna try to wrap things up now. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, it was just a great time at Indy. It was great seeing everybody. If I ever said hi, that's what makes those events worth going to, is seeing and interacting with the community.
Yep. Yeah, we got to see a lot of people there. A lot of people, came up and said hi to us. We were, always happy to talk with you guys. Any particular highlight for the event overall? I guess my highlight, I'll put this in post, is the Spirit of Arena playmat.
Yeah.
Very happy to have that. That playmat, when you put your hero card in the middle, it makes it look like your hero has wings. It's like my new favorite playmat by far. So, how about you?
Mine would have to be obviously the stream game.
Round 5. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Show me the real fatigue deck.
Yeah.
I said the real fatigue deck.
Yeah, it's good when it generated a lot of memes. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Just talking about it afterward, and then having Dagan play my Goliath Gauntlet deck.
Yeah.
Was a hoot.
Yeah. So that is for those of you who don't know, Nathan and I are in the Goliath Gauntlet, and we played some games. And go watch that Goliath Gauntlet tournament. That's they should have the quarterfinal games out in probably this weekend or so, maybe next weekend. We'll see. Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, okay. I guess we'll kind of wrap things up. So yeah, this has been Josh Lau and Nathan Crawford for the Card Guys. Just want to give some shout outs here. Shout out to fabrec.gg for sponsoring the team, as well as Card Culture. They are kind of the, if you saw me on Friday, I was running around with the Lumina Go Boomita shirt. If you want to get a Lumina Go Boomita shirt, you can go there and get that. We also have a Patreon where we come up with hero guides and sideboard guides, and we have a Discord and everything like that. We also have a TCG Player affiliate link that you guys can click on. That really helps out the team. But yeah, I guess we'll see you guys around. We should be streaming soonish. I think Nathan and I both have some ideas up our sleeves for decks we want to try on stream, and just I think making some having like a semi-regular streaming schedule, like maybe Wednesday I'm streaming, Thursday Nathan's streaming, Fridays Will streaming, something like that would be cool. Yeah, we're gonna get into that soon. All right, yeah, Josh and Nathan signing out. See you guys. Take care.
Take care, everybody.